I'll be stubborn around, but we'll try to get through it, so.
That's fine. And again, your name is Boyd Clements,
Yeah,
and you're 88?
yeah,
And we are going to be talking about the B-27?
B-17.
B-17, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The B-17 today.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of people come through. Well, wonderful. Could you tell me about when you first enlisted and some of the experiences you had?
Well, I always wanted to fly, but so I enlisted in the Naval Air Force and got through all our tests, went up to Omaha to be signed in, and they had us lined up there, and some guy come out of the back room and said, "Oh, hold that program's canceled." So
Wow.
I beat it home and enlisted in the Army Air Force. And went from there to Shepherd Field, Texas for basic flight training. And from there, we went to Logan, Utah for a couple months of college training. And I guess they were going to teach you how to be a gentleman and this and that. And from there, we went to California. Well, anyway, I guess Santa Ana at the classification center. You took all kinds of tests there. You told them what you would like to be, but sometimes you didn't make that, or you ended up with something else. But we went through a bunch of that there, and I got my pilot. Okay for the pilot.
And how long did that process take?
Oh, it was a couple months, I think. And from there, I went to primary flight training at Ryan Field and outside of Tucson. From there to basic flight training, which was at Marana, and that was on the other side of Tucson. And advanced training, I went to Douglas, Arizona, and that was multi-engine. And from there, let's see, I draw blanks all the time, but we went to Kingman, Arizona for a B-17 transition, and it was a big gunnery school. And there we flew gunners, and for air to ground, they had 50 caliber machine guns. They were shooting at SOCs, air to air.
Yeah.
And then we had some low altitude where you're flying the B-17s right down on the desert, and we were shooting at targets on there. But we got into Kingman one day, and the next morning we were getting settled in, and somebody come in and said, "Well, you're up for flying tonight." And I'd never ever even been close to a B-17. I'd seen some of them fly by, you know. And so I went down to the flight line that night, and they told them who it was, and they said, "Well, let's see." They looked me up there and said, "Well, see that plane, that 17 out there, wait out there when be a pilot out there after a bit." Well, I went out there, and I was only 19 years old, you know, and walked around that big thing, and I said, "Oh man, you know, you get kind of cold feet." But they brought a bunch of gunners out. They were going to take them on a night orientation flight, and they loaded those guys up, and here comes the pilot, and he was grouchy, I mean grouchy. He said, "Okay, let's go." And he went up to the front, and there's a hatch up under, and he hooked up there and flung himself up in there, and well, I took a couple shots at it. I finally made it in, and he was sitting there in his seat when I got up there, and I got buckled in, and he says, "Read me the checklist." I said, "Well, what's the checklist?" So I got in there, and it was dark in the cockpit, and they had these blue lights, it was all these gauges and everything, and you know, you're just a kid. And he showed me where it was, and I started reading them off, and he was punching this and checking that, and then he'd tell me something, I'd read something, "Well, that's over there, you do that," and this and that. And it's quite a checklist,
Yeah.
you know. And So he said, well, start one, and, okay, tell me what to do, you know. So there's 4 switches, just hold that one until it starts. And that darn thing, it cranked and cranked, all of a sudden the bell stopped fire on those engines and stuff, and roars and everything. Well, we had to go through getting all 4 of them started. And away we went. Oh, he had me, well, unlock that. I think it was a tail wheel, so he could taxi with it. He got out there, and then they will have a little check out right at the end of the runway before you take off, checking the magnets and this kind of stuff. And he went through all that, and away we went. And we got up about 5,000 feet, and he leveled off, and he says, "You unbuckled your seatbelt." And he says, "I'm going to go down the nose and take a nap. Call me in an hour and a half."
No kidding.
I made some fleeting, he says, I'll use a little swear word. He says, "You've got your goddamn wings, haven't you?" He says, "Call me in an hour and a half." So here I sit. Yeah. So I could see the base off over there. So I just flew circles clear around that base so I knew where I was.
So you didn't have a flight plan necessarily, you were just making circles?
They were just, I don't know, teaching the kids stuff back, and they were walking by it from the nose back down, back to the waist and this and that. And so, boy, I just took those big circles and all I used the throttle was just enough to keep my altitude and stuff. And, well, I'm telling you, that was a long hour and a half, and you didn't touch anything that you didn't have to, you know.
But kind of trial by fire, just learning on the job.
I don't know to this day. I've thought about it, whether that's just something that they do when the first, just see what you do. And that's all I did is fill those great big circles. Finally, it wasn't quite an hour and a half, and I grabbed somebody, and he was going down the nose there. Brought him back up, and he was still grouchy. Went in and landed, but that's some of the little things you really remember. But from there, well, there's another little experience there. I bumped with a kid from Lincoln when we were at Kingman. I don't know why, but the night before we were supposed to ship out of there, he was they sent him on a night flight. Why, I don't know, but he didn't come back, and I questioned it. And they flew under the side of a mountain.
Oh, no.
And it was old like, well, anyway, there's one mountain that sticks up there. And so I went down the next morning and asked if there was anything I could do, and I said, no. It says it's scattered all over the mountain up there, so we're sure he's dead, and we'll have to. So I thought, well, I went back home. Then at Lincoln, of course, and I thought, well, I better go see his family. He had a wife and a kid. And I got halfway there, and I couldn't do it.
Oh.
So from there, at Lincoln we picked up a crew. That was kind of a melding point for all the planes. They'd come in there, and then you'd have all gunners and everybody come in, and you'd pick up a crew. And from there, well, I had it pretty neat. I just stayed at home in Elmwood.
There you go.
And called in every morning until something happened. But and the crews, they always seemed like they put guys from all over the country, and they kind of found out later they didn't want 2 or 3 guys from the same area because they would buddy off in the crew, and that way you could make a better crew.
That makes sense.
So from there we went to Alexandria, Louisiana for crew training, and we took practice down there with our own crew, so we got all used to each other and everything. There's one crew there we got pretty friendly with, the Beal crew, but I'll tell you about them later. But well, let's see, then when we done there, we went back to Lincoln. From Lincoln, then we shipped out to Europe. We didn't fly our plane over. We went over on the Mauritania, which is, I think, the third largest passenger vessel at that time. I think they had about 8,000 guys on that plane, on that trip. It was kind of a fun trip. We were officers. We got the staterooms, and all the other guys were down in the hold. And officers were supposed to take so much duty time down there. But I guess they left my name off the list. But, but I went down there a couple times, and that was an awful mess. You could skate from one end to the other because they all sick, and everything. But we could take one bath every now and then, but they get your shower ready for you because they drew so much water, But that way we'd skip ours and go down, sneak up one of the guys down below because they couldn't tell whether they were officers or not when they didn't have any clothes but a towel on.
Right.
Got most of them with one shower going over. We landed at Liverpool, and we bussed down to Sudbury, England, and that was the 486th and the 830, then was in 833rd Squadron there, about 40 miles northeast of London. I kind of had some other things.
Close this library door here.
Picture of our crew.
All right. I'll make sure we get that. I'll get a still shot from that.
But I mentioned the Beal crew. They were the only other crew that we trained with in Alexandria that went to 486, so we were real close to them. And I thought maybe I could just, well, let's see. The plane, when you first got there, you kind of flew a different planes. Then after we got settled down, why, sometimes we had a good navigator, so they made us a deputy lead a lot of the times. So you'd take over in case the lead plane got shot down. And the plane we ended up, when we were flying, the lead crew had spot jamming equipment. You ever heard of that?
No, I assume it's radio jamming in localized areas?
Yeah. It was back in the waist or in the radio room. We had a battery of radios. We had an extra man on the crew. He'd dial across all of the gun signals. He'd find one, why then he would jam it. And also our bombardier that trained with us didn't go over with us because at that time they were starting to use the Mickey bomb.
Okay, we are back on.
Okay, I guess we were talking about bombardiers, because we didn't have ours with us, but when we flew deputy lead, they would send not long another bombardier with us. I don't know.
So you only had a bombardier when you had a mission that required one?
Yeah, because when you had deputy lead, because you were supposed to take over, so I had one. I thought maybe we had navigator that was a real good one. That's probably why we got deputy lead a lot of the time. But he wrote a little blurb on every mission, so I thought maybe I'd pick out a couple of them.
Sure, sure.
And I'll stumble through them. They're kind of hard to read, but this was mission number 7, 5 hours, 22nd of March, 1945. Target, German troop encampment near Essen, Germany in the Ruhr Valley. That area was called the Happy Valley. Bombed visually, altitude 23,000 feet, flat, moderate. Other than another short mission, but can hardly say it was a milk run. Far from it. Target was just across the Rhine, about 10 or 15 miles from the lines. It was only over enemy territory 15 minutes, but it was a lifetime. Flak picked us up just before we got to the target and held us until we got out of range on the return from the target after bombs away. Flak was bursting all around our plane. They really had us in their sights. We had several near bursts. One much too close for me. One piece about the size of my fist went through the nose, right between Don, the nose gunner, and myself. It entered from the 2 o'clock on the right side of the fuselage, just above Don's head, and went out in 2 pieces, just above the navigator's table. In fact, I had just moved from the path of the flak about a minute before. I had been standing behind Don watching the target and moved back to the navigator's chair to take instrument readings at the time bombs away. The flak went out the left side and one piece hit the cowling of the number 2 engine. And one piece, the cowl flap, and punctured the exhaust stack, which if we hadn't been lucky could have been fatal explosion. The puncture stack almost burned the gas line in 2. Rough enough for me. PFF, please. So that's not a visual flight. There were some 40 holes in the plane.
That sounds like a close call.
Yeah. Kelly, this is what I kind of put a little more about the flight. Kelly did not put this in the mission story. Our crew took this pretty tough. Our closest buddies, the VO crew, took a direct hit into bomb bay and blew up. They were flying just below us, and our tail gunner said they were tracking us. That means that they locked on. We had some ideas about that when they were hit. Because when they're tracking you, they're shooting bursts and they'll walk up, and then there's, this big flak, they're just shooting all over just without it tying it down. I mean, and our tail gunner said they were tracking us when they were hit. So they were right below us, and they were walking up and got them, and then probably the next shot was maybe on
So they kind of got in the way and took the shot that was meant for you.
And let's see, that's when we decided that they were locking on to us, because it had happened a couple other times, and they always come up right towards that jamming signal. So on a later mission, we told the tail gunner to call me, and I would call a waist gunner, and he would tell the spot jammer to turn off his radio. Well, another mission, and it happened. So sure enough, the tail gunner called, I called the waist gunner, and his spot jammer threw the switch and the burst stopped immediately. Everyone in the group has to go to briefing after each mission. No one in the group saw any chutes go from field plane but Pollock, our tail gunner. He said he saw 2 chutes way down, close to the ground. He was right. Years later, I saw an article a guy wrote about being shot down in a B-17. Lo and behold, it was written by Don Johns, the navigator of the Beale crew. When the plane blew up in the bomb bay, it blew him out of the front and the tail gunner out of the back. I looked him up later and had some good chats with him.
Wow.
Isn't that one in a million?
That is amazing, yeah.
And that's the article that he wrote in the paper. This is an 8-hour, 45-minute mission. Mission 13, 17th of April, 1945. Target, Dresden, Germany. Bomb visually. Altitude 22,000. Black intense. The roughest mission yet. Had the earmarks of a rough one from the start. Our 13th and one of the roughest targets left in Germany. Was a beautiful day, if you can think of it that way. Visual all the way to the target area. Got into the target area and ran into contrails and lost the rest of the group. Our group got lost because you had to spread out and so our group was on our own then. Overran the IP, that's the initial point before you turn right as you turn on to the bomb run. The IP was coming near the flak area. Kelly knew that because he has the flak maps and everything, the navigator. The lead navigator told the lead pilot to change course to the IP, but he saw other planes to the right and tried to join them and run us through one of the heaviest flak areas in Germany. We got the hell shot out of us, had a burst in the forward part of the waist, which hit the fuse box, cut all the electrical wires, knocking out the radio equipment, and cut the control cables. So, I got a little to add to that. He thought we got a burst in the waist, but it wasn't. It was a big shell that came up and hit the edge in the waist back there, hit through the side of the plane and then went out through the top.
Wow.
And it didn't cut the control cables, but it messed up all of the pulleys and stuff when the cables were loose, and it was we had a real tough time controlling the plane from there on in. Let's see. That was the number 2 engine, wasn't it? One burst near the number 3 engine, which knocked it out. Part of the burst went through under Clem's, not Clem, nickname, under Clem's side window, hitting his flying jacket under his arm, and it went. I was just putting on my black helmet, and it went through.
Wow.
Right through there, and cutting off his oxygen hose, went through the flak suit. We thought those were great, but it went right through that.
Went right through it.
Yeah, and also went through his Mae West, a narrow escape. A miracle he wasn't killed. when I cut off my oxygen hose, I took my oxygen mask and I had grabbed the loose hose and put that in his mouth. And I had it in there quite a while because we were real busy right then, and it got violent. So, well, later on, after we got a bunch of stuff done in our flight engineer, went and got a walk-around bottle, and I got that hooked up. So, yeah, and he's continuing, he says. So, anyway. A piece of flak, it went through and hit the pilot's other pedestal over there. And I carried that, well, it was about the size of my whole thumb. And I carried that, and I don't know, it got lost. I kind of hated that, but anyway, we did. Well, then he said, we were so badly crippled by this time, we could no longer keep up with the formation, so we had to turn back. All of my navigation equipment had been shot out, so I had to use DR, that's dead reckoning, and a prayer to get us out of any more territories so we could let down to where we could see the ground. Luck was with us, and of course, luck was with us, and of course, the invisible 12th crewman, God. And when we broke out of the contrail and picked up our contact with the ground, we were right on our specified course. We also had received a hit in the number 4 gas tank, and were losing gas rather fast, rapidly. And we were real worried about that because that was right over by the exhausts and so forth, would blow up. So I had big slim transferring gas from one tank to the other, so we would save the gas plus maybe keeping it from getting on fire. Let's see. We sweated out the amount of gas with the remaining engines all the way across Germany and Belgium by cool efficiency of everyone on the crew. We got back to base safely. On the radio, when we lost all of our electrical, everything electrical on it, but just the cowl flaps and the brakes. So a radio operator had to crank down the gear. He always complained it was a tough job. I don't know why somebody else wasn't helping him. But, on landing, all the gunners jumped out and kissed the ground in gratification. I too felt some of the old Mother Earth, same for old Mother Earth. Pollock, the tail gunner, also had a very narrow escape. He received a hit on the right side of his head, and luckily his flak helmet stopped it and had escaped with a knot and a abrasion on his head. Number 13. I'll always respect that number. So, I guess that's about what
Those are something else.
yeah, well, we were lucky, so.
Any other close calls that you can think of?
Oh, there were worse ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had one mission, we were coming back, and after you got out over the channel, well, usually you didn't have to fly real tight, nobody was gonna bother you, you know, and we were kind of spread out, and Bert and I were, the other pilot and I were sitting there. We saw another group went across way up ahead of us, never give it a thought. But all of a sudden our plane just dropped. We hit the prop force from that other group.
Oh, really?
And that was one of a couple things that we made boo-boos.
Mm-hmm.
We both had unhooked our seat belts, you know.
Oh, no.
And got comfortable. We were stuck against the top of the plane, and we just couldn't, we were helpless. We couldn't, no way to get down there. The guys in the back, they were scattered all over. But luckily enough, it didn't flip over, and it came down, and down we came, and we got buckled up again. Yeah.
So you learned a lesson on that one.
Yeah, and the other boo-boo, I think we really serious boo-boos were made. It was an early mission, it was dark and everything, and we went out there. We were all lined up and was out ready to take off, and they put up the red flag, or light from the tower, and said we're gonna have a 10-minute wait, but leave running, and we're gonna get you off. And so we did. And well, finally the green light came on, and the way we went, and Bert was taking off, and he started to pull her up, and that wing, left wing just went down, and he hollered, "They're locked!" I grabbed with the control lock. Bert said he didn't do it, and I know I didn't. But I grabbed her, I thought sure we were gonna drag a wing.
Yeah.
But we got out, we made it.
Shoo.
Yeah.
What about towards the end, your last few missions, and then leaving the service?
Well, that Dresden mission, the worst one, that was the next to last mission. And I don't know why they wanted to go bomb that one, but anyway, so. Oh, and then after the war, we were sitting around there, and the Russians, you know, had come into Berlin and so far, but the Germans had taken all the French boys and men over there and made them work in their factories, plus other people too. And they just pushed everybody that was in their territory, they just pushed them over the line. And so we flew into Austria and flew them back to France. When we got ready our turn to take off, well, they put those people back in the waist, you know, which made the plane real unbalanced, you know. And they could take anything that they could carry on with them, and they put that all down in the bomb bays. And just before we took off, well, the Jeep run out. We was one of the last ones to take off, and pulled up there and said, "We just got 4 guys out of prison camp. Well, can't you take them?" And so we said, "Well, we're not loaded very good now, but we had them get in and stand up right behind us." And they were tickled with their sorry mess, but I think 2 of them were Aussies and 2 of them weren't. I can't remember, but they were soldiers, American, I think. And so we took off and we landed in France. And they said, we don't want to be here. Just take and get out of here. We want to get out of here, you know. And I said, "Oh, okay." I guess they never told us where to take you.
Yeah, you're right.
So we said, "Hide down here." When we landed in France, and then we took him home, and they said, "Well, you're bringing them over here for?" And I said they wanted to go home.
Right.
And so they took them down and got them showered, and fed up, and about 2 days they were on their way home. But otherwise they would have been in those Lucky Strike camps and been there for a long time. But they was tickled over with that. So.
Wonderful. Anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, I don't know if you got any questions, so
What was the procedure to your after your last few missions, and did you stay with the service as an instructor or in any other capacity?
no. We had the chance to sign up. They were going to take a bunch of planes and aerial photograph all of Europe before we went home, I suppose. But well, we were ready to go home. So
Right.
we didn't do that. Yeah. Of course, after you were in for what, 10 years. I mean, it never got called up.
Do you have some other photographs that we can just lay out and maybe get some video?
Oh, I guess that's another thing. In Elmwood, we have a GAR hall, Grand Garden of the Public, and we used it for Legion Hall, and our Legion was going downhill. And so we were sitting down there one night and nobody wanted to be commander. The door opened and a gal come in and said, "I'm a veteran, may I join you?" I said, "Sure, come on in." And you can just go through there.
Sure, let me grab the camera here.
I'll be stubborn around, but we'll try to get through it.